course, how are you doing as an artist at the moment? I mean, nowadays there's no telling what the situation is on the other side of the globe.
Yes, I kind of don't know how to answer that. It's multifarious, it's multifaceted. The whole reason that I embarked on this interesting times gang, sort of solo long distance collaboration project was because I mostly play in rock bands. And obviously there were no gigs, there were no recording sessions for the better part of 2 years, and so while all that was on the shelf, I just really dove into the box, right? I really dove into laptop recording and producing my own stuff. So on the one hand, the pandemic has given me a lot of freedom and a lot of time and inspiration to create, but on the other hand, like all of my three bands, or that I play with, four bands, I guess, technically, have been completely on hold. So yeah, I contain multitudes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask actually about the Interesting Times Gang name. What's the story behind that? Is it the Ian and Banks culture series?
It absolutely is. So I think pre-pandemic, I've been a sci-fi nerd for a really long time. And somehow I managed to avoid reading Ian Banks through most of my adult life. But then I think about 3 years ago, somebody finally put me onto him, and I devoured all the culture books. Like, that's all I read for like a year straight. And I was just really, really enraptured by them. And when the time came for, to slap a name on a solo project, I wanted to do something Banks related. And I just thought that was it's both really important and also kind of snarky. I feel like Banks is his whole perspective on AI, artificial intelligence, and the ships that comprise Interesting Times Gang was kind of snarky, and I liked that approach. I liked everything that name connoted.
Cool. We are, of course, talking about the Beats, No Rhymes, No Life album coming out actually tomorrow, if I'm correct. So you mentioned that you usually play in rock bands. So could you tell me a bit about the creative process with this kind of material?
Yeah, it's really various. So Beats No Rhymes No Life is actually my sixth release under the Interesting Times Gang name. And the first couple of records, I call them weird pop. I don't know what other people, would describe them as. I've given up trying to describe the stuff that I do. It's a game that you can't win. So I'm like a big pop guy. I love like a 3.5 minute song with a massive hook. So that's always what I'm drawn to writing when I write my solo stuff. And a lot of the stuff on the first two records was collaborative. So I'd come up with a skeleton of a song. I'm predominantly a bass player. Like in all my bands, I play bass. I do some vocals in those bands. So I'd come up with like a rhythm track and some bass. And when I did the first couple records, I didn't really play guitar at all. So I would farm the guitar out to other people, like just send demos around to my various friends who play guitar and say, does this speak to you? Do you hear anything that could accompany this? So where there's a lot of collaboration just by sending files back and forth. And I did that with vocalists as well. I got my friend Baxter to sing on a few songs, and my partner is an excellent vocalist. So she sang on a bunch of stuff. But yeah, it's the Beats No Rhymes No Life, that stuff, while there are a couple of collaborations on there, notably with Graham Scala, who is my partner in Collapse Culture, which is sort of a deconstructed dub project that we do together, and my buddy Tron Jovi, who's a DJ in Milwaukee, a hip hop DJ. We have a couple tracks where we collabed. The rest of the stuff was kind of just me, doing sample manipulation and writing bass lines, both synth and electric bass lines, and just spending way too much time, in the Sound Toys effects rack playground, and just breaking everything. So yeah, this stuff is way more me, with the accrued impact of all of the hip hop and electronic music that I've listened to my whole life.
As you said, yeah, you delved into this during the lockdown. So, what were kind of the inspirations and influences for this album?
That's a really good question, and I don't know. Like, I feel like at this point, my influences are so just sort of like implicit. Like, it was very seldom that I would like come in with an idea like today I'm going to make a track that sounds like John Carpenter, or today I'm going to make like a Kraftwerk or a Bomb Squad sounding beat. Um, it was never I'm never that overt or purposeful in what I'm doing. Mostly it would be like maybe I'd find a sample that I would jump off from, or I'd find a rhythm track or a drum beat, a drum loop that I really liked, and I would just sort of build the track up from there. And then in hindsight, I would go, "Oh, this is like a dark synthwave thing that sounds like it could have been in a John Carpenter movie." Or this sounds like a Bomb Squad track because there's 37 noise things going on in here. It sounds like an old Public Enemy song. So yeah, it's the inspiration is like it's just in my DNA at this point. I almost never woke up and said, today I'm gonna make a track that sounds like Chemical Brothers. It just, this stuff just sort of is in there, and then when it comes out in retrospect, I can kind of say, oh yeah, I definitely hear the Hank Shockley in this one or whatever.
How was the experience to, work on new music in the lockdown times?
It was great. For me, it was absolutely a godsend. Like, I have a little outbuilding, like a little shed in my backyard where my recording studio is. And both my partner and I were working from home. We were lucky enough to have we are knowledge workers, I guess they call us. We have a job that we can do remotely on a computer. So we were lucky enough to be employed for the entire time. And we were both working from home. So we have a very small home, and I would give her the inside. I would come out here and do my stuff on the computer, do my day job. And then when I was done with that, I would just work on music, until it was time to come in and prepare dinner or whatever. Like it gave me a much needed escape, and it probably gave her much needed respite from having to put up with me. So it was absolutely like my really critical creative outlet for me during lockdown.
Well, it all comes back to Corona nowadays. But yeah, how has this time, have you seen any effects on the underground scene back there?
I mean, obviously, like I feel like the rock bands that I'm playing in are just starting to play shows again. I've played two shows so far. So I live in Northern California, and the vaccination rates in my community are very high, and it seems like the majority of the club owners and promoters are being very responsible. Like I think they're being responsive to the community. Like they see that people want to feel safe when they go out to a show. So a lot of the shows and events are, vaccine proof of vaccine required or proof of negative test required and mask required. And all the shows that I'm playing, have to meet those guidelines. But overall, I think we've seen a lot of the independent venues close down. You've seen more sort of corporate aggregation at the top, the big promotion companies like Golden Voice buying up more and more venues. And, it's always the little people. It's always the indie venues that end up getting squeezed out. So I think when this all is over and done, we're going to have had more consolidation and fewer places for, folks who play music that's out of the mainstream, fewer places for us to play.